Good morning, everybody. So I'm a little out of breath, just had my morning run from the ferry. I'm going to convene this July local land bank meeting, July 19th. And we will convene the meeting. And let's see. We do have members of the public here, so I will open it up at this point for public comment. And let somebody else talk since I'm out of breath. And David Douglas, I see you have a hand up. David, can you hear us?
I can hear you and I'm not waving my hand.
Okay, we hear you now. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, it wasn't his hand.
Oh, okay.
It was a person.
Oh, there you
All
go.
right. Is there any other public comment?
Oops.
And now I can't see the screen.
Oh, no,
Please
take
give
that
a
away.
Comment from President Biden. Okay. Seeing none and hearing none, we'll have another chance at the end of the meeting. So at this point, we will go on to look at the minutes of the June meetings. Any discussion before we move approval?
I had one question under the second public comment section. It says Tanya read a comment on behalf of Tracy Cottingham. Thank you, Marilyn, for your concern about letting the public know about the Yale test. Tracy saw a very good article today that shows how climate resilient test can really backfire, and she will forward the article. I missed that explanation of what the Yale test was.
Yeah, I think,
So that this was in regard to the question of applying for salt. And Tracy saw an article which was not about that. It was about something that happened in Britain with a different kind of approach.
adding,
It created a big public story.
right,
Thank you, I didn't see that.
they're adding materials to a bay to try to de-acidify,
Oh, okay.
the big stink. Not literally.
But I don't think we heard that word at the meeting, Yale test.
Right, that was what was confusing.
She said it was an article.
Yeah.
And forwarded it to us. We were talking about public process and discussion about the proposed salt project. Okay, Ellen, did you have something?
No, I didn't.
Okay, anybody else?
Nope, that's
Okay,
good.
anything more consensus on the approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Minutes are approved. Oh, didn't see John Kane here. Morning, John.
Hi. Good morning to you.
Okay, we will proceed then with a partner update from our partners, the San Juan Preservation Trust, and Vicki Edwards is here. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning. Well, good morning, commissioners and San Juan County Conservation Land Bank staff. My name's Vicki Edwards. I'm the Conservation Director at the San Juan Preservation Trust. I have a couple of updates for you this morning regarding some partnership projects. First being the North Shore Summer Social, which is tomorrow from 1 to 4 on Orcas Island. So far, we have 150 people that have RSVP'd for the gathering. We are asking folks to RSVP by noon today. Part of the reason that we're doing RSVPs is that the property actually is not open to the general public at this time outside of this gathering, and we do not have sufficient parking for everyone. So we'll have shuttle service coming in from the Orcas Island Ferry, as well as from the middle school and high school, and that service will start at 12:45. We also just need to know how many folks are coming so we have enough shuttles and food, and we'll have name tags, and are really excited to see many of you tomorrow. This is a great opportunity for us to highlight the project and our unique partnership Kathleen Lewis, our Director of Special Projects, will be giving beach tours, talking about the importance of the North Shore property for salmon recovery, and of course, acknowledging the project partners and Washington Recreation and Conservation Office and our funders, the Salmon Recovery Funding Board, private donors, as well as the Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Fund. So lots of things going on tomorrow and hope to see you there. Thanks to Peter for tabling and coordination with our staff. And also thanks in advance, Lincoln, for sharing your remarks and being there as well as a representative for the Conservation Land Bank. And if you want to register for the gathering, please do so by noon today on our website. You can click on our July e-news, and there's a link there for you to go to an article to be able to register. Also, within that e-news, I wanted to share with you all that there's an article that was written by Kelvin Baker, our Director of Communications and Outreach. The article is titled Better Together. SJBT endorses the renewal of the Conservation Land Bank. And our board is endorsing the reauthorization of the real estate excise tax to support the work of the Conservation Land Bank. We realize this is a citizen-initiated initiative, and it's not being led by the Commission or the San Juan County Conservation Land Bank. But I just wanted to share with you all that our board of directors and organization is in support of the reauthorization, and that there's a great article on our website written by Kelvin in our July e-newsletter. We have accomplished remarkable projects on our own as a nonprofit, and then you all, of course, as a government entity. But the pace and quality of our conservation work is enhanced anytime we partner on projects. And we are able to exemplify that with projects such as the North Shore, Turtleback Mountain, Richardson Marsh, Beaverton Marsh, Lopez Hill, Katy Mountain, and the list goes on. And so you'll see that we are supporting that reauthorization, and please check that out on our website. That's the end of my updates, and I hope to see many of you tomorrow for a beautiful day at the North Shore Summer Social. Thanks so much.
I've seen Mike Pickett applauding, and I will second that applause. All good news, Vicki, and on a great partnership. So thank you very much for your support for the reauthorization, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Brian. Thank you all.
Okay, and I see Councilmember Minnie here for our council update. Christine, good morning.
Good morning. I look like I have no hair. Good morning.
Good morning.
I should check this out before I turn on my camera next time. I see that John Kane's in the audience. That's fun. I'm coming to you from my living room. There is COVID in my house. I don't know that it's me because we ran out of tests, but I feel fine anyway. Better here than there. My report's going to be pretty short this morning. The first and, one of the most exciting times of the year for me is the fair, and it's almost fair time. And along with that comes entering your prized possessions into the fair. And I know each and every one of you has something, right? I expect to see them. And the fair, Parks Fair Department is making it extra easy for folks to register their items for the fair by having online entry, which began, I don't know, a couple weeks ago and runs all the way through the end of the week just before the fair. There is also going to be pickup and drop off of items on Orcas, Lopez, and Shaw Island. And I think this is a first. They've talked about it for a long time, but I think that they finally were able to pull it together to make that a reality this year. And I know that the pickup drop-off locations are the Lopez Island Grange, Orcas Island Grange, and Shaw Community Center, but I do not have, deeper details at this point, but pretty easy to find by accessing the county fair website at sjcfair.org. As noted on today's agenda, council passed a resolution to put the land bank conservation real estate excise tax renewal on the November ballot. This was accomplished with good work and support by many, including John Kane from the PA's office. Thank you, John Kane. I was gonna say that even without you being in the meeting. I promise.
Here, thank you.
And there were several advocates, obviously, those we know well and appreciate in the audience as well. So congratulations on getting to this point, everybody. Council will be meeting on Shaw at the Shaw Island Community Center this Tuesday, July 23rd. And believe it or not, this isn't judge-worthy. I'm not sure of the time. I don't know if it's even fully determined yet. So it's probably going to be somewhere around 10, but that more to come. And that's it for me today.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Minnie. Hope your family feels better and don't let it catch you.
Thank you.
Brian, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
sure.
And I think this is best directed to John. Hi, John. About the last steps for getting this measure on the ballot, because the PA's office needs to approve the language and get it to elections, but I'm not 100% sure on what that process looks like.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to speak to that. So what happens when a local government has a measure that it's putting on the ballot is that the local government, in this case, the county, submits its resolution to the auditor. And so that step occurred. The next steps are for the prosecutor finalizes the language of the ballot title. Again, it's for any local government measure, but including this one, finalizes the title and generally sends it to some representative of the local government to say, this is the thing, right? And I think the main, although the prosecutor is the author of the title, because there are very specific statutory requirements, has to be 75 words and so on and so forth. That's kind of more of a typo check, is it 1% or 8%, just making sure it's accurate. Then the local government finds pro and con committees that will write the statements that go in the voter pamphlet. So all of those things will be happening. Now, I think the prosecutor has 10 days to work on the title, and I think that 10 days started in the last couple of days. So I would guess that by a week from Monday or something, that part would be finalized. I suspect that the council is pulling together the committees. The council's well familiar with putting things on the ballot and finding pro and con people. I think that's usually not very hard. Sometimes it's hard to find folks on one side or the other. So yeah, I think I would encourage you, Lincoln, to check in with the council staff to see if they are missing anything, but those are the next steps. Everything ought to be done on August 6th, which is the primary day. And even if it's not, the auditor will then move forward, make sure the committees are formed and that there are words to go in the voter pamphlet so that the voters know what are they deciding on and what's the background. Yeah.
So the language that was discussed at council, will that be revised at all?
I think it will. I believe that the language in the resolution draft that the council reviewed, for example, I don't think the words land bank appeared, and there was discussion about let's add those words. I expect.
And they approved that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Jane Yeah,
So I expect that to happen, and I'm not sure what other changes the prosecutor will make precisely, but, she heard the suggestions and will fit them in the 75 words as she can.
But when you say the prosecutor, John, that goes through you to Andy?
I think it's fair to say that I've done all I'm gonna do. Yeah, she will finalize it now. Yeah, we've worked very closely on it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, quite well.
Okay, moving right along, we are at commissioners' reports. Who has something to report? I'll take those in the room first. Peggy here.
okay, so a couple different things. We've had agricultural lease meetings, talking about Beaverton Marsh and all of that, and that's been really interesting and helpful. Trying to move that one along. Charlie's been doing some great work on that. And Lincoln, of course.
And that'll be in stewardship reports too. right?
Yeah, yeah. And then we've also had some discussions around, different properties on Lopez, different farmland properties, and that's kind of been more external. So I was out, well, I was part of the canoe journey, not part of it, but helping support the canoe journey last week. Pretty fun to see everybody showing up, 100 something people there. And that's a lot of people to see, but it was really great. It was a very, kind of very moving, kind of sharing more than most times that I've been part of it. And that was really cool.
The Spencer's good or what?
Was it Auburn? Yeah.
I showed up for a little bit, voted over, just only got a couple hours, but it was great.
Yeah.
Connecting
Yeah, it was
folks.
pretty sweet. Watmo, I've been out to Watmo a couple times. The parking is full and it's going up the road and then it's out on the road, going out to Colville. So a lot of people out there, and this is high season. And the other day I was going out there and I noticed it's like, whoa, somebody drove out here. So they must have, anyway, I figured the only way that somebody was driving out there was, there must have been an accident. So I think the EMTs, you get,
Yep.
no, yeah. Anyway, it was interesting to see that they drove almost all the way to the beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's like, kind of mowing everything down, but it's good to know they can get out there. Because I think there are a lot of people, maybe a lot, what's a lot, but people are climbing on the rocks, on the cliff going up, and I think there's even, I don't know the terminology, bolts set in the rocks, which I don't think by BLM is allowed. But anyway, I think there's going to be more of that, so more use that way, so probably more accidents. Yeah.
Amanda has her hand up. She might be able to.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Hi, Amanda.
There we go. Hi. I'll just speak a little bit to what I know of the incident. So we did receive notification on Monday afternoon from Lopez Fire and EMS that they had been responded to a rescue call down there. So they were the ones that removed the bollard and cut down some trees so they could get a vehicle down the trail. And ultimately, when we got in touch with Bree about it, she said, well, it probably needed to have some clearing anyways. So not too concerned about what what they did on the trail, but I guess the call was someone who had fallen off of the rocks, and I heard at least a broken arm and maybe another injury, but that's about all I know about the story so far.
Okay.
One of the improvements that has helped is that the BLM has been has posted no parking on one side of the parking lot so that vehicles actually have room to turn around now when they go down into the parking area.
Right. I did notice all those were pushed aside a little bit. And then Owen was out there doing surveys when I was out there yesterday. So they're in some kind of survey of use out at Watmo. And then I did walk out to Watmo Head, and Amanda, good job. I could see, there's some trail work that had been done. And I don't know if that was the Youth Conservation Corps or the Historical Society. I'm not historical, the Hikers Society. But anyway, it looked like some nice trail work going from the power line into the property. So good job on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then yesterday went out to Pecos, yesterday, 2 days ago, out to Pecos, and that was really fun. And that was with friends of the San Juans. Very interesting.
Thanks, Meg. Who else?
I went to
Meryl.
Pato's too. It was fantastic. It was
Yeah.
wonderful to be up there. After many years of not being there. Also, have visited a lot of our local land bank properties on this island. And, did get to attend the Katy Mountain trail opening, which was lovely. I got to take a walk with Eliza. And, make it all the way up to the edge of the property and back. And since then, I've been back twice. So it's a really lovely spot. The parking area looks great. It looks great. As does the trail. Thank you.
I don't make a date to go.
It's lovely.
I'll go next. I went on a hike with the Lopez Trails group. They have a monthly go take a hike. And it was prearranged with Amanda, so 10 of us went out to Watmo Head. Also, another part of the hike, we went to Point Colville and met with a couple there. She is paraplegic, and we tried out a carrier that got us all the way out to the rocks at Point Colville with 2 people helping her. So it was rather amazing to look at.
How'd you get over that log? Because there's a log down.
They managed to lever her over the log and up the rocks. It was pretty cool. It's not easy by any stretch, but then 2 people did it. Went to a farmer's market on Lopez, and that was interesting. I came prepared with fact sheets and all sorts of information, and people wanted to know about trails. Most of them were not from the island, so it was a good time, and there was a lot of interest. I did speak with someone from the Nature Conservancy from Oregon, which was kind of fun to make contact there. Other than that, ag leasing, and then I've been doing research on basalt weathering, because this is right up my alley. This is what I did way back in college, so that's really fun. If anyone else wants to dig in.
Publish soon, Tim?
No, I just really stuff. I have lots of stuff you can read.
Oh, me too.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. How about our online commissioners? Anybody? Not seeing any hands.
Anne
Okay,
Marie does.
well,
Anne Marie has her
okay,
hand.
Anne Marie and then Amy.
Okay, so I've been able to get out a little bit this month as well. We did I was involved in 2 really nice North Beach tours. One was really kind of private with Representative Larson, which Peter led. And then Tyler did one a week or so ago, which was a really nice one. I love the way our staff is really talking about stewardship when we're out there, so we're really showing people the changes that we're making and how we're working on keeping the water clean and fire prevention and things like that. And one on Turtleback, Peter really kind of emphasized a lot of the stewardship work that we were doing. So hats off there. And then one of the things my husband was saying to me is, how fortunate I am being on the commission, because I've been out to North Beach a few times, but 99% of our island community has not. So this San Juan Preservation Trust event on Saturday is going to be really exciting. And I'm really hoping that a lot of you get to be there as well, because I think it's just going to really emphasize to the community how important the whole land bank is. And everybody seems to be talking about the land bank. I think some of it has to do with the real estate excise tax, which of course is good. And two of the organizations that I'm involved with, both the Orcas Community Resource Center and also the Orcas Island Community Foundation, have both passed resolutions supporting the real estate excise tax. And I know this isn't something the commission's involved in, but I think from a communications perspective, it's really valuable for us because people are saying, I'm with you, I support this. So I just, hats off, guys. Thanks.
Anne Marie, what was the first organization?
The Orcas Community Resource Center and the Orcas Island Community Foundation is the second one. So
Great.
really nice.
Good. Okay, and Amy.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just quickly, I had the pleasure to hike the Katy Mountain Trail with Erin a few days before she took off on her summer teaching adventures. And I just wanted to say what a marvelous job everybody who was involved in that. It's really impressive, and I've since hiked it again. So just really grateful for everybody who did that, and well done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, I'm a member of the Grange, we're in the Grange Hall, and the Grange also passed a resolution supporting the reauthorization of the rate, which that was.
That's great. Thank you.
As did the Locust Community Trails.
We're hearing more and more.
Yeah.
That's great.
There's a lot.
Okay. Mike, anything? There's not. Okay, so I'll share a couple of quick things. I also have taken.
The only thing I have to add is I noticed as well a lot of press around the REIT, a lot of support, a lot of groups signing letters, and I think that's going to be very influential. You know, we can only hope, but it's good news. I think there's momentum.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay, I've also had the opportunity to take a couple of North Beach tours this month. The first one, I actually took alone. The tour was listed as noon on the calendar, the website calendar. Got there at noon with a couple of friends, and the preserve was closed. So I called Peter, and apparently Peter had done the tour at 10. Bunch of people saw 10 and arrived. But so we took a private tour without the benefit of Peter's guidance. But we had fun. And I also joined Anne Marie and Peter on the tour with Congressman Larson. And he had a lot of good questions, and Peter really gave him a good tour of the projects that he's been doing and the projects that we have planned and what his needs are. So great job to our stewardship staff. Second thing is just to add to the list of endorsements, I've attended, I think almost all of the candidate forums to date, either online or in person. The Orcas Forum was last night. And I think, as a matter of fact, I know that all of the candidates so far all of the candidates have said that they endorse the land bank and the REIT re-endorsement. And I know that several of the candidates have met with me, asked questions, have met with Lincoln for more information. So that's great. We're doing well on endorsements. And of course, that has nothing to do with us. Okay. So moving on, we have the financial report, Mr. Aaron Rock.
All right. Share my screen. Yeah. Okay. This'll do. All right, so These two financial reports are for our two funds, Conservation Area Fund and the Stewardship Management Maintenance Fund for the end of the second quarter of 2024. First up, what we're gonna look at is the Conservation Area Fund. This is where we receive our real estate excise tax and then make transfers to the stewardship for operational purposes. So we're gonna start here with cash changes. We have a decrease in cash of 77,558. Most of that is just due to our transition from holding more cash on hand and transferring it into the local government investment pool where it can accrue interest. So I do monitor that on a monthly basis to keep that around the 500,000 threshold. At the end of June, we were at 834, but we'll be making a transfer to bring that down to 500,000 so we can take advantage of the high interest rates that we have right now in the LGIP. In our local government investment pool, we did have to pull some money out in the second quarter, and that is why that is down to 748,000, and that was to make the payment on the interfund loan to stewardship. That was $1 million principal and 117, almost 118,000 in interest, going back to the stewardship endowment fund. And that was a $3 million loan from stewardship to help complete the North Shore acquisition. So that is why cash in the Conservation Area Fund is down to a total of 4.6 million between cash and LGIP. Moving down, let's see. So first off, what we'll talk about in the right-hand corner, we have a little bit a REIT chart, and this shows month by month where we sat over the last 3 years and then this current year, 2024. As you can see, that totals currently year to date at just under 1.4 million. This is 36% of the budgeted amount for the year, which we have projected to be 3.75 million. At this point, we do believe that we are going to be below budget on that. We could be around 3 million. So we are conscious of that, and we have been for the last couple months. We've been, tracking a little bit closer, working with stewardship staff. We just need to be fluid and flexible, depending on where REIT ends up. What we're going to do if we need to defer some projects in stewardship. Obviously, we won't defer anything in regards to opening preserves. But there's some things that we can do on the fringe, whether, taking the opportunity and skills of our stewardship staff to take on some of the projects over contracting. There's a few things that we can do to shave if we need to, working with them, and they're aware of it. So we are remaining flexible, and if we need to make an adjustment on the third amended budget, we'll do so. So it's all things that we're aware of. And yeah, so 1.378 million is, so last year at this point, we were over 2 million. So that's just kind of an idea of the difference between last year and this year. As I mentioned, a few other things with revenue. We had 118,000 in interest from interest revenue that went out to the stewardship interfund loan. I'm sorry, I skipped some revenue things there. If you remember, see sale of land Q1, just for reference, that 421, that was the conservation easement with Katie Mountain Hauschka and partners Preservation Trust. Sometimes it's good to point those things out, what those larger numbers were there. We are still expecting that 1.75 million in grants for Watmow addition. That's Aaliyah and salmon recovery. Looking to be taking those in this year. So those are some of the bigger numbers in the revenue area that we're still looking for and have gotten this year. In expenditures, we made our quarterly transfer to stewardship. That was the 1 million or the 648,000. That's our site enhancement and operations for the stewardship fund that we make quarterly, and that is based on budgeted numbers. We also have the interfund loan debt service, so that was the 1,117,000. And then bond repayment, we did have servicing fees in the second quarter, and that's the interest and service fees for those bonds, nothing on principal. So if you see that, $50,000 in bond payment, but you see up in long-term liabilities, the number didn't change. That's because it wasn't principal that was paid. That'll happen end of November, early December. So you'll see that difference there. And that is all for the conservation area fund.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes,
Is the interfund loan fully paid now?
we have one more year.
1 year,
Yep.
$1 million plus
Yep.
interest. Okay.
1 million plus interest, and that interest rate is predetermined. It's state law. We have a signed resolution with the county for that interfund loan, and that is accumulation of what the LGIP rate was for the year plus 75 base points, 0.75 base points. So there is a little bit of an increase over LGIP that we benefit from that.
Anne Marie has some.
Yeah.
Hi, Aaron. I
Mhm.
was just wondering, I know this happened in the first quarter. What was the piece of land that we sold for 421?
That was the conservation easement, Katy Mountain, Hauschka.
Actually, that was not that house property, that was, property we bought from Katy Mountain Development,
Oh. My apologies.
Okay,
but, yeah, but it's also a part of the Katy project.
okay. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Thank you, Lincoln.
All good. Thank you.
Okay,
I've,
so
I've,
we're
que-
gonna-
I've got a quick question. This is Mike.
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you give me a little more color on the 1,750,000, the status of that? Expected
Yeah, I can jump in
salmon
there.
recovery, Watman? I'm sorry, go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, there are three things in that number, actually,
Sorry, what were we
250,000.
talking about?
Where,
So
State
Mike
grants
asked the
for the-
question of the state grants,
Okay.
and the 1,750,000 and what we're expecting there. So, 250 of that is actually, for Cascade Creek water rights. And that's just in limbo as the ownership for Rosario is in question. They have not sold those water rights yet. But we have that grant in place, plus some additional funding, if we're able to purchase water rights. So that's one of the pieces. The other 1.5 is for the Watmow Head project. There are two grants, one salmon recovery and one, the aquatic lands enhancement account. We're still waiting on the final appraisal, but hopefully, we're hopeful we can get this wrapped up by the end of the year and get that money through the board.
Do we
Okay.
need the appraisal for both of those or just the ALEA?
It's both. Since the grants have been basically wrapped together, so.
And won't Peter and Aaron's grant for Crescent Beach end up showing up in that category as well? Or is that gonna be under?
so we can't, when it comes to grants, the county won't accept it on a budget until it is final. So once we do receive the final award and work with them, we can get that on there.
So we do have some grants, other grants coming in. One is for the work at Crescent Beach as part of our update updated management plan and doing some forestry work out there. That's from DNR. I don't know how that's actually structured. Peter might have a better idea of that. We have two other grant proposals going forward, both for the Cherry property acquisition on Orcas. So there's a 1.25 million request from Salmon Recovery and $1 million request from Aaliyah. The final presentation for the Aaliyah project will be in August. We'll get a ranking. We'll know sooner about the Salmon Recovery money. Once we get the Aaliyah ranking, we still have to wait for the budget to be passed by the legislature next year. However, if we get a high ranking, we've got a pretty clear indication that we'll have the money and be ready to try and move forward. I don't anticipate us closing on that property before the end of the year.
And are we engaged in the appraiser for Watmo? Or?
Yes, no, we've been back and forth. The complicating factor with Watmow is the fact that the granting agencies don't want the structures to be part of the grant, so we basically are excluding them from the grant and still eliminating the development right. So the appraiser's been working to figure that piece out, how that might work, and working hopefully with a review appraiser also. So we can get all that cleared up and just get it done.
I'm seeing that Peter has his hand up. I'm guessing you're gonna answer the Crescent Beach grant question?
Yeah, just offering clarification. The DNR funds won't actually come to San Juan County. It's basically pass-through funding that'll go to DNR and then out to a contractor. So we won't actually see it. We don't have formal match requirements or anything like that.
Okay. Any other questions of Aaron so far?
I've got a question again. Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding a way to raise my hand. So I've got a new.
Peggy has a question. I'll call on you next.
Yeah, I have a question. So between the REAP shortfall that's anticipated and this 1.7 million or 1.5 million Cascade Creek, what salmon, that's a couple $1 million out of our budget, which was break even. Is there a necessity at this point to start planning for that, or is there anything to plan? Obviously we've got the cash to absorb it, but I'm just wondering how it would change if our budget was actually 2 million less.
Yeah, the plan is definitely to balance cash with budget as it is currently. So the intent is to stick as close to possible as what we currently have budgeted for ending cash. And that would be adjusted by reducing costs and expenditures. And the way we can potentially do that is through deferring projects and stewardship if need be. Because that's where the bulk of the work is. We don't have any acquisitions going on. All the money that we're really budgeting and talking about isn't being spent in stewardship. And typically over the years, what we have budgeted in capital expenses, we don't usually meet that number. It ends up being, 65 to 75% of what is budgeted, just because things happen. We just don't get certain projects done, or they end up being cheaper because they're budgeted numbers, not based on actual cost expenditures. So there is some flexibility in there. And like I had mentioned, the stewardship staff is known for a few months now that these are the trends in REIT. So we're all kind of just working together behind the scenes to make adjustments if need be, when we need to. And in terms of budgeting and showing that would happen in the third budget amendment if we do need to make any adjustments.
Yeah, the only point, Pete, the question I have really is 2 million is about what we spend in stewardship a year. And you're not gonna make that up with stewardship spending. So are the other numbers like the interfund loan debt service, $1 million? Is that a requirement? Is that a fixed number? Is there flexibility in that? Can
Well,
it
we
be
did
pushed
already,
out?
we already made that payment. We made that based on what the agreement
Oh, that's
is.
right.
Yes, we do have to make that payment. That's a formal agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do the best we can. We are fortunate. We do have the money in our LGIP and our endowment funds to soak up any significant downfall, but we are still expecting to receive those grants, those state grants, so that, the 1.25 or 1.5 million for Watt Mile addition is,
Okay.
is still expected. So, that is a really worst case scenario that we don't get that money in
Okay.
time, but
All right, well,
even if we get it early 25.
I know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, so I just had questions about
Yep.
that.
Okay. Peggy, I see that you had a question and I see that Marilyn has a question. I'd like to give Aaron a chance to finish your report and then have some questions and discussion afterwards.
Okay.
The point that Mike raised is, I think, kind of an elephant in a room, and we can talk about whether to have that discussion next quarter or at our next meeting, or we can discuss it further after you finish, Aaron.
Okay. All right, so I will move on here to the Stewardship Management Fund. Similar to the Conservation Area Fund, we made adjustments to keep cash holdings on hand around 500,000. That's why you see the cash reduction there. And the increase in the endowment or the local government investment pool had a substantial increase of 2.5 million. That's because of those cash transfers and also the transfer for that stewardship loan to the Conservation Area Fund. Those monies came out of the endowment originally, so the principal and interest goes back into the endowment. So that's why we are at 2.5 in increase over the first quarter.
Is that where are you, Aaron? Is that the line 33?
No, this is just at the top. We're just getting started here.
Oh, okay.
Talking about cash.
All right.
And cash changes right there. So currently combined in the stewardship fund sit just over 7.4 million. And there are no liabilities with the stewardship fund as it acts as an operational fund. So on to revenues and expenditures. Interfund loan interest is in there as a revenue, along with the 100 million principal, as we mentioned before. 73,000 in interest just on our endowment fund alone is a testament to show why we decided to take that money out of cash on hand and put as much as we could in that fund while the interest rates are high. I mean, that is substantial interest revenue. That is great to see. So significantly over budget. Again, when we were budgeting for this biennium, the rate was around 1%. So now we're at 5.4. And the way it works with budgeting is, they typically don't like to make budget amendments on revenue. You just exceed those numbers and then they make the adjustments in the auditor's office at the biennium review midway from year to year. But when we're talking about making amendments, they really just wanted to have the revenues not adjusted. So
if I could jump in for just a second.
Yep.
Am I understanding that 421% interest includes principal repayment? Or is that strictly interest? And,
117 is
That's
interest.
revenue.
That's interest revenue.
okay,
My question, well, never mind, we're not supposed to ask questions yet.
Sorry, could you ask your question again?
I did it.
Okay.
I think Marilyn just answered me.
Okay. Okay, and then the only other revenue, for this quarter is the site transfer for operations, and that goes directly into cash. And that is for stewardship activities. When we look at expenditures, stewardship, admin costs, remains on target, property management and maintenance, these are our, contracted properties that are not capital expenses, so these are just management and maintenance of the properties. This is what it takes, and we are on budget, you know, right there at 47%, halfway through the year, everything's looking good there. And then when it comes to capital expenses, you see, hey, we're only at 18,000 of the 618,000 budget. And that's, roughly, largely because a lot of bulk of the work that is done for capital expenses is done this time of year. So we just haven't seen those billings come in. You know, there were some for Katy Mountain that we just opened up that I still haven't received from vendors for bills there. So, and then North Shore work, things that are happening on the ground right now that we just contracted, big contracts. A lot of those billings will show up in that third quarter range. So we will see that number tick up, and that's when we start seeing a lot of these capital expense bills coming in, that's when we're gonna really be able to shape what the picture is gonna look like thereafter.
And can I ask you a question about that particular one?
Yes.
Sorry for jumping the gun.
Your rule.
My rule and I broke it. I recently got asked by a sharp-eyed constituent, what is the difference between, and I'm looking at lines 44 and 45. Where the question was, why is the admin cost so much more than the property management maintenance cost? I told him that my assumption was that the admin cost included our stewardship labor salaries. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is definitely the main driver
Okay.
in admin costs. There's some equipment purchase in there, publications, just things that aren't on the preserves that cost money, you know?
I wonder if we could retitle that to make it clearer for anybody who's looking for the few who look very closely at our budget. Admin often connotes the people sitting back at a desk and organizing the projects. If we know that that's stewardship on the ground labor, that's a completely different impression.
And we do talk about this every single time we look at a financial statement.
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering if it would at least be worth a footnote.
So I did
exactly
change
what
it to
my-
admin costs,
Yeah.
which was the adjustment from
Oh, okay.
stewardship management, or I think is what it was previous. So I did make the adjustment to put admin, but,
It doesn't do it.
Maybe a footnote would be appropriate.
that's fine.
Because there always seems to be confusion about those two categories.
Stewardship activity, I don't know, think of another.
Well,
Peggy,
you can
go ahead.
email me lists of phrases.
Go ahead.
So this has come up, I know, numerous times, but the idea of footnotes. Certainly when we have big acquisitions or, you know, high expenses for different things, it's really helpful for me if we can have a footnote that says this is for.
Kind of like a running list throughout the year.
Yeah, and if it's not too complicated, I think it would be really helpful.
Okay.
But it could be really complicated.
So I've got a couple of questions. First of all, way back, I wanted to mention, when I met with Aaron and Lincoln yesterday to go over the financial statements, I learned something, or it was pointed out to me, something that's relevant to our REIT levels and stewardship budget, and that is that when the 32-hour work week was implemented, it was recognized that we might have to contract out more work. Now that we're looking at shortfalls in REIT, those contracts are less of a good idea because they're more expensive to us than our in-house work. So there's tension between the number of hours our staff can actually work and the budget, in that we don't necessarily want to contract out things that we can't do in-house anymore. I just think that's sort of an important philosophical perspective. I wanted to also mention that, the interfund, well, I'm not gonna mention that, never mind. Just, the other question was, the capital budget. I wasn't on the commission when we adopted that capital budget of $618,000. And I wonder if sometime we could get a look at the details that make that up, because
Definitely.
that's where, since we've spent so little of it so far, I know a lot of those contracts are already in place. And that's for this year.
Mhm.
So a lot of the work has probably already been done, but it would be interesting, since there's so much unspent money in that particular line item, to know what the plan was for this year.
And which
Yeah.
line item is that?
This 618 right down here. There we go.
Yeah, I can certainly send you, the breakdown of how we budget for, both the property management maintenance and capital expenses is really listed out by preserve, by specific projects. So I can definitely share that with you.
One other question that I thought of this morning was that I don't know if at the end, an acquisition plus, projects related to getting that acquisition, finalized, if we ever do any sort of a report on actual to budget or what our actual expenditures were, including staff hours. I don't know whether you're assigning those costs to the individual property unit, or whether, I mean, it's more work, and I don't know if you're already doing it or not.
Lincoln, you might be able to speak on the process when, we do this, not the summary, but the stewardship project
Do we do a per project or per
proposal, the
parcel?
proposal, and there's kind of a
Synopsis?
breakdown of the cost.
Do we,
Yeah. Projected, no?
so maybe you can ask your question again.
Well, like, let's say like at Beaverton, we've just been in all the separate, doing this development for trails and things. Do we track that individually for staff time and all those things that have a budget going into it? And then look back, in comparison to where we are.
So that the total value of that parcel now includes the improvements that we've made. Do we track it that way? Where do we do it?
No, okay, I misunderstood your question because I thought you were talking about the initial, when we're considering an acquisition,
No, I'm
do
more
that. So you're
considering the
talking-
projects that I mean, sometimes we have an acquisition, and then such as North Shore is the perfect example. There's an acquisition which has certain costs,
right,
certain revenue sources. And then we have, work that's done to improve or fix that
Okay.
property. Do we track that per
Yes.
parcel? So that we can, at the end of the day, see that we put this amount of money into the acquisition, this amount of money into the improvements, and therefore this is our investment in that parcel at this time.
yes, thank you. After clarifying it again, I was thinking of pre-acquisition, as that's where I thought you were coming from. Yes, post-acquisition, every preserve that we have a project code. So anytime we do any work there, substantial work, it gets coded to that property and tracked and logged over time. So there is a breakdown of each preserve and how much has been spent there over time.
But not for labor.
Not for labor, just
Okay.
for expenditures for capital expenses, substantial and specific supplies costs, and then
But labor
contracted
is the
work.
big part of the costs.
Yeah, we just, I mean, the way our labor costs is handled and tracked, and how much time they spend on each preserve, that is not something that we track.
That's really too difficult for us to track, that we have, our stewardship staff is doing 5 things in a day. And so to ask them to, oh, well, the 45 minutes you spent there, we want you to make sure to break that out, so we just.
I understand what you're saying. I've been there and done that, and it's a big pain, and I'm not suggesting it, but we are missing the larger part of our costs and.
Well, the substantial part depending on our contracting versus in-house work.
Yeah.
And the only reason.
And volunteers.
And volunteers,
Yeah,
which
that.
is a huge piece. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I agree. It's very difficult and time consuming to track. Do those figures get reported to the commission?
The
And that-
figures of
right.
individual preserves or?
Yeah, an individual person.
No, because we
they are-
don't track them.
They're not staff, I mean,
Oh.
so they're
Yeah,
available.
I
If
can,
somebody wanted
and I've
to-
shared it in the past, maybe it was prior to you being here, I think it was asked, and I did share with the commission a breakdown of each preserve.
Thank you for the education.
I'm seeing that both Anne Marie and Mike have their hands up. I'm also looking at the time, we are behind schedule, but I think that this is, an important, subject and one that everybody's obviously interested in. So I want to take your questions and then get a consensus of whether we want to stay on this and, we'll move on. Anne Marie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of Marilyn's point about the fact that, and this is not saying anything negative about hiring contractors, but a lot of times the general public and sometimes people in leadership don't realize the overall impact of small changes that really do hurt or impact the budget. And I certainly support the 32-hour work week, but with that has to come an acknowledgement across all of government that things are going to cost more when you suddenly take hours out of the time frame for that maybe normally would go to people's wages that now are going to go outside, because it always costs more to hire outside than it does to keep the work inside. And that's why you generally see people that if they're jobbing something out for a short period of time, try to bring that resource back in under their own umbrella. So just, a heads up to the council and to the other people that run components of our government to understand the long-term ramifications. And I think this is the kind of conversation that's probably going to be happening across all of our departments. So we are not alone in seeing this. And I think it's really important for us as commissioners to be aware of that and acknowledge it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, just a quick reminder to me, because I've forgotten, what is the percentage of revenue that we have to maintain administrative expenditures under? I saw we were over 10% now. What is that number?
Life of the program, 10%. And as we go on throughout the year and REAP revenue increases, it usually outpaces. So even though usually the first quarter, second quarter, it does show admin costs do tend to run high. That's because our REAP funding hasn't outpaced it yet. And
what happens if we end up at above 10% for the year?
Well, nothing per year. It is life of the program. There were years, 2018 or 2008.
Back in the recession, we definitely exceeded that 10% number for 2 or 3 years. But that was obviously because of the drop in revenue and not wanting to make radical changes during that period. Which worked out fine because it came way back down, and over the life of the program, it's been 6%,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, well, that's fine. So it's a target. But I would just, with the way things are trending with revenue and administrative expenses, I wonder what happened if we were in violation. So that's good.
Yeah, I don't usually tend to pay too much attention to it in the first couple quarters because once, REAP picks up throughout the summer, that number decreases substantially pretty fast.
Okay.
Okay. So commissioners, I'm going to ask, we are now getting significantly behind schedule. But this is clearly, and particularly our REIT, I won't say deficit, our slow return on REIT funds is clearly a topic of concern and should be. I also noticed that this topic segues nicely into the second part of our director's presentation on stewardship funding. What would you like to do? Would you like to defer this discussion for a future meeting, wait for a quarter or,
No, I think that, well, we have REIT figures monthly, so
Yeah.
there's no reason not to be able to discuss this. July's REIT figures will be available
Okay.
for us, I'm assuming, at our next meeting.
okay,
So we could have a small agenda item to discuss, again, budget. I think we need to keep focused on it. I think the commission needs to be aware of where we are. So can we defer this to our next meeting and just plan a short agenda item to update ourselves?
might not
For the
be short
stewardship trajectory, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
well,
for the whole budget.
for
Yeah.
the REIT, the way, how's the REIT looking next
Right.
month? You know, how's our stewardship budget looking? What are the capital projects that we're engaged in right now that are already under contract? Just a little, doesn't have to be a big one, but a little one.
How would you
I
like
think-
that reflected in the future agenda items? Re-update or budget update?
But
I'm taking, just for the notes.
Yeah,
continue.
I think budget update and it can go right under, Aaron's report. We can give him a little more time. I'm not sure that this won't take substantial time and that's okay.
Yeah.
Is everybody good with that, deferring it a month? Putting on the
Yes,
schedule?
I have one question.
Yeah.
When might an amended budget have to go in?
September.
Okay. so we
Yeah,
should talk about
we
that.
already
Okay.
engaged in the second amended budget. And that will be approved end of August. And then in September, they'll begin the process for third amended budget and the mid-biennium review at the same time. So that's fine.
Okay, so we'll get another crack at it. So at the next meeting, on future agenda items or just schedule Aaron, we'll talk about, budget and hopefully have, hear more about, pardon me, about the contingencies of what we might do should we fall short by the third quarter or the end of the year. Okay, so that concludes future agenda items and we're ready to adjourn. Okay.
Wait.
So we're gonna push the stewardship funding trajectory discussion to that too.
No, I'd like to do that today.
Okay.
Yeah, I would too.
So I'll ask you then, what's your pleasure? You have two presentations. Do you want to defer one of them?
Well, my presentation on the stewardship trajectory funding is not much of a presentation. It's more of a discussion item.
Good.
So we can talk about that, that's fine. The other one's an actual presentation, which won't take long.
Okay.
We could shorten our break.
If you can do both of them and skip the break or shorten the break, that's great. Why don't we take them in reverse order? How is that, since we're on the budget
And then
discussion?
take a break.
So go ahead.
Okay, so the stewardship funding trajectory is something that's, it comes up a lot over the course of the program, and this year it's obviously been raised. Particularly in the last meeting, there was a question about with the reauthorization, whether there should be some clearly dedicated amount or statement about acquisition versus stewardship. And so I think this item is really meant just to hash that through. And I think that the consensus in my conversations with people at this point is, rather than setting some kind of figure in stone or making some kind of absolute statement, it's important to look at what's actually happening in the program now. And the reality is that over the life of the program, when we began, clearly, we had very low stewardship costs. Over time, as we've added properties and obligations, monitoring obligations for conservation easements, just kind of across the board with stewardship costs, they've gone up. And so that is reflected probably best in the figure that we have in the annual report, which is out now. that shows that this year, basically, we're approaching 50% of our expenditures going into stewardship rather than acquisition. And that trajectory continues to increase, and that's basically what we expect. However, there are a few issues going on here. One is, I don't think it's really critical for the commission to make any kind of definitive statement about, well, this means we're just gonna ratchet down acquisitions. We don't really know. I mean, we have a good plan for acquisition. We've got good goals. A lot of that is opportunistic. A lot of it depends on how much money we've got available to do things. So if we continue to work that way, if we have great acquisition opportunities, we'll pursue them. But at the same time, we're recognizing that we're going to be increasing our stewardship costs. There was a suggestion made some time ago about building the stewardship fund to a certain level, and thinking that, well, this will be all that's needed into the future for stewardship. And I don't see that as being terribly realistic, given our history with interest earnings in the stewardship fund. We went through a 15-year period of getting 0.2% return on anything in that fund. The idea of counting on that to sufficiently fund all of our stewardship programs going forward is very problematic. I mean, it's just, when this program was initiated in 1990, I think the LGIP rate was 5%, something like that, and I think that was what people thought the future would hold. What did not hold that, and now we are back into a high interest rate. That's great, but I think realistically, the important thing here is to continue to put money into that, into the endowment fund, as is possible. So we have that $500,000 a year going into that fund. But we also have to just kind of accept reality and try and find other ways of augmenting that, which is what we've done over the years, particularly in working with the Preservation Trust, where on some of those projects, we've had them set up stewardship funds, which they can invest as you would in endowment. Our investments are quite limited in scope by the state constitution. Theirs are not. So that was an innovative way of just trying to find additional sources of revenue. And I think we're going to have to continue to do those things. Continue to set money aside. I don't think it's really makes a lot of sense to say, well, you know, this is it, we're phasing out acquisitions. I don't think that's really accurate, honestly, and I don't think that's really what most people who are most of land bank constituents, meaning constituents across the county, are not wanting us to never buy anything again. I mean, there clearly is a desire when particular properties come on the market, us to do something. Good. There's never a shortage of people asking us to buy something. So we just have to take that as it comes, but continue to build that stewardship fund over time. I think that's kind of all I've got. So I'm opening that for discussion.
Okay, commission discussion. Anne Marie.
Yeah, I just want to support what Lincoln said. I think there's been a question raised, I know, here on Orcas by one individual, and I think that he really came in at the right place, and we need to keep focus, stay on course, And, you know, we adjust as we need to. And I think we're on the right path. So I like what you said, Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I will second what both Lincoln and Anne Marie said. I think we are on the right course. I've been party to trying to answer the questions, multiple questions, from the individual that Anne Marie's referring to, one of our supporters, but one who is concerned that that we have enough to take care of the land that we have in the future. We have both, or all of us, I'm including Sandy in this, tried to allay those concerns and explain what we're doing and how we're doing it. My own thought on that is that what we're doing is exactly right. We have the endowment, we have the $500,000 annually that we're putting into the stewardship fund. We haven't taken a look at that in several years, and maybe we should periodically look at how much that is. It could be, for instance, one flexible way of doing that would be a percentage of our revenue.
Exactly.
That's the possibility. Anyway, my point and my view on this is that we're doing the right thing. Really, the question is a matter of telling the public what we are doing and reassuring those who aren't sure. I want to say, I think Tanya and all of the stewardship staff have been doing a great job of publicizing what we are doing in terms of on-the-ground stewardship, in terms of projects, and showing the public that. What the public isn't seeing really is the financial backing for that. And maybe we need to show them a little more of that. The chart that went out with the annual report that basically shows a current trend of decreasing REIT revenues and increasing expenses really tells the story. But looking at that also causes some concern. It raises a question that we don't really answer. So my feeling is that we need to do a little bit more in terms of outreach and education to tell the public how we're saving and how we're planning for the future.
I
That's
agree.
Marilyn.
I was gonna say percentage of REIT as well. I just wanted to ask somebody about stewardship. Are there many opportunities for grants within the stewardship umbrella? For particular projects, for instance, or particular restoration projects or that type of thing?
Well, more and more, and like with the Crescent Beach project, it may not be in the form of grants. It may be that we've got an arrangement with an agency that they're gonna pay for X, Y, and Z. But there seems to be more and more opportunities for that to
That's
happen,
great.
particularly with regard to forestry.
Thank you. Good news.
Hey, anybody else?
Yeah, I've got a question or comment. I think we're already in an informal hiatus on acquisitions. Seems to me we haven't been talking about any in the last year, which I think is appropriate. I think whether we formalize a hiatus or not, I don't know that I care, but I know if a project was brought that was $1 million, I'd be nervous about that given our situation. So I think we're already in that. And then I know we've talked in the past about selling properties. When you sell a property, you're not really, what you're giving up is access to the property. You're not giving up the value of the ecology that the reason we bought it as far as environmental reasons, because we have a CE on it usually. And so I'm just wondering, is this a good time to assess our properties and determine which ones may not be achieving what we thought or hoped they'd achieve, but we still have a conservation easement on it, and maybe we could, even with the easement, we could even without this would be purchased. We could sell that property and maybe back fill a little of the revenue that we've lost through the REIT for acquisitions, were one to come up.
We could definitely take a look at that and go through our property list. And in some cases, that's a little bit clearer cut, and others, it requires a trade-off. And so I'll give you an example. The King Sisters property here on San Juan was purchased with the idea that it would be resold with a conservation easement. And we've retained it because what we recognized was that, whoever purchased that property with the conservation easement, which would allow for residential development in it, pretty much no farmer was going to be able to purchase the property. It was going to be too expensive, and what we end up with is open space instead of agriculture. So it requires looking at each property individually and making those kinds of decisions. In that case, we elected to hold on to it. Obviously, going forward, if we ran into a REIT is not reauthorized, that's something that that decision would really have to be revisited. But there are a number of other properties that we could go through and take a look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, it might be worth it sometime to have a review of those properties, but I don't think it's appropriate now.
So in order for us to revisit that, doesn't there have to be a statement when we purchase properties that we include the provision that we might reset? So if we don't have that provision in there, does that preclude that opportunity, or can that be amended?
Well, the land bank has never resold a property unless it's been specified at the outset in the project summary that that's what we were going to do. If we're in a period of extreme financial distress and the question was, do we need to sell a property in order to keep the program going? And it was not put in that category when it was purchased. Well, I don't know. That's a discussion that the commission would have to have at that point.
I mean, I'm not recommending that we do that, but I'm just kind of mostly commenting on the fact that first, the statement of potential for resale has to be in there when we purchase it to consider a property. And then I was thinking, well, so anyway, yeah, so I'm not suggesting that we open up the whole catalog.
Yeah. I will agree with the last thing Mike said, is that I think we should defer any discussion of reconveyance of properties until next year at least. Okay, so if there's no more discussion on the stewardship budget topic, I'd just like to say, particularly to Tanya and to the communications committee, that I would like to see more and better at graphic communication of our stewardship budget and budget planning go out to the public.
Hey, Brian, if I may just add one clarifying comment.
Sure, Peter.
On Mike's comment about acquisition, I just wanted to remind you that we have, Lincoln has brought forward, a proposal for a shoreline property on Orcas, 24-acre property that's been discussed a few times, and we've got 2 grant applications in review for that. So just in terms of, kind of update on potential future acquisitions.
That's one that will be very popular, and if people knew about it, they'd be excited. Okay, I see Lincoln's writing, but what do you want to do? Do you want to go ahead with your presentation, or take a break first?
Let's take a short break.
Sounds good. Okay, let's take 5 and come back at 7 minutes past 10. Lincoln.
All right, so Harry, can you pull up that presentation?
Yep.
We forgot our landing knowledge.
I didn't forget, I didn't have the breath to read it.
Didn't have the breath. Okay, well, here it is. I'll do it, but should I do it now?
Sure,
Okay,
you're on a
so
roll.
since I put this up here, we're gonna go through it, and it's, let us acknowledge we reside on and care for the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have stewarded and called this place home since time immemorial. Let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. Okay. I wanted to, just do a retrospective, as I did for, the Beaverton Marsh Preserve and how we built that over time. I wanted to do something similar for, the Zylstra Lake acquisition. Just to share the steps of, how this property was acquired, what we spent on it, and what the outcome is, basically. So this is largely financial, but it's a complicated, transaction, so I thought it was important to go through it. Okay, so the initial thing that happened here is that we purchased the property with a deed of trust, jointly with the San Juan Preservation Trust. And then we had to figure out how exactly we were going to come up with the money to really pay for the property. It was really pretty dicey, quite honestly. This was later in 2015. Earlier in 2015, we had purchased Mount Grant, also with a deed of trust, and that was still an ongoing project for the Preservation Trust to figure out how they were going to fund it. So this one came along and, was even farther out on a limb. Okay, so the first thing that we realized we needed to do was resell part of the property. So that was built into the project summary. And the idea here was October Farm is the main infrastructure area. And we created a new parcel basically and went out and found a buyer. So we had to we advertised that, we got bids, we had an appraisal done, and we ended up reselling October Farm. That was the first thing that happened. We also secured, and so you can see the boundary of the project now changes, and October Farm was also sold with a conservation easement held by the San Juan Preservation Trust. So the outline of the property in this aerial is what we have now. So that changed quite a bit. We were able to secure a coastal wetlands grant for a little bit under $1 million for this acquisition. And this is one of the things about this property that I think is important to remember, that, when we looked at it, and when people thought about it, although a lot of people didn't know it existed because you could barely see it, they thought about it as an agricultural problem. And it's part of San Juan Valley, strong agricultural heritage. When we were looking at it, the critical question was, we knew what we were up against because there was a competing offer and the property would have been developed. So that's what we were trying to stop happening. Finding the resources to make this project work was a good lesson, really, in where you can find funding and where you can't. So really, ideally, it would have been great to find a grant or some kind of way to help us cover our costs that was related to agriculture. That was not possible. So there are other important features of this property, and one of them is the tie to False Bay. And it's a really pretty central and important piece of property in the False Bay watershed. So that's why we're able to secure that coastal wetlands grant. And once we did that, we also got another grant, which we did not end up using because we thought when we were first looking at this, that, that recreation in particular, you know, maybe more active recreation might be an important piece. There is no lake for people to go swimming and on San Juan Island, except Egg Lake, which has 2 parking spaces. That didn't really bear out because of the ag designation and because of the water quality issues, which we found. And so the other big component of that state grant, which we were awarded, was a prohibition against doing any kind of agriculture on the property. And so the commission eventually decided to step away from that one. And we were able to just move forward with the coastal wetlands grant and come up with the rest of the money. Basically, as this was a good period of time as revenues were increasing and we were able to make it work. So we've jumped all the way through the slides here. Okay. So the last piece here, if you're looking at what happened, the initial purchase price was $3 million. We estimated that appraised value. We realized we were buying it in tandem with the preservation trust. So there's no way we were going to be paying more than appraised value for it because of the partnership. We did have the resale appraised, and that was the 825. We had the final purchase appraised, and that appraised for 2.7. We purchased that last piece for 2.3 million. So $1 million in land bank funds, $1 million coming from the coastal wetlands grant. And then we had made an initial down payment. So our total cost here was 1.2 million for property with an appraised value of 2.3 million, so significantly under. Another thing that was important here is the fact that the federal grant, the coastal wetlands grant, had other requirements which we had to negotiate. One of those was to get a notice of federal participation on the University of Washington's False Bay property. I think a lot of people had felt, you know, or why wouldn't they feel that that property was protected, but it was not. And we learned that kind of the hard way, as when we were going for that grant originally, they wrote a letter of support and agreed to participate. In the interim, when we came back to them in 2017, trying to conclude this project, they had kind of a regime change at University of Washington Real Estate Office, and they were looking to get paid for the property. So that was a very, very difficult negotiation, but we were able to convince them to back off of that, and we secured the notice of federal participation, which they valued at $900,000 at no cost. So it's an additional bonus that came along with this acquisition.
Did that require some kind of protection to be placed on that property for that? Maybe I'm jumping ahead.
Yes, so the notice of federal participation is exactly what that is. Every agency has their own thing that they do. So if you're dealing with a preservation trust, they want to do a conservation easement where they lay out very, very lengthy terms, as we do. We do conservation easements, very specific things you can and cannot do. If you're working with a state agency, they take out a deed of right if they give you money, which is basically a restriction on what you can do with the property to limit you to the grant purposes. For the federal government, they use a notice of federal participation. It's basically the same thing as that deed of right. So that is what prevents any future development on the UW property. So I just wanted to take the time to go through all of this and give you some sense of, you know, what we paid, where we got money from to make this deal work, and all the components of this project. And I think we can just go on to the next slide. I just wanted to show you this little indication of what might have been. Next slide. So.
I'm disoriented. So is that Zilstra right in front of us, the lake?
Yes,
Okay.
so what we're doing, this is looking east. You're kind of looking at the middle of the lake and we're looking to the northeast. And that's what could have happened. The proposal was for a 28 unit subdivision, which they could have done. So that's what we stopped at. And this is a slide that you've seen before. This is just our overall slide showing over the life of the program, what we paid for properties, what they were appraised at, what funds we got from partners. And the net result is there at the bottom where total land bank expenditures would have been 56 million on an appraised value of almost 100 million. And partner contributions have been 62 million. So we basically are at that 1-to-1 for our projects and other projects that we've assisted with, which we don't own, but we're key players in that protection. So
This is such a great slide.
thank you.
Good work.
And that's all I've got. So questions if you have them.
Would it be appropriate to talk about the water right and what the original Tomas estate size was?
Yeah, sure. So when we got this property, there was an agricultural water right associated with it. The Tomas estate was significantly larger than what we ended up purchasing. This portion of it, because that's all we could afford, basically. When we did the deed, we did work with a water rights attorney who included the water right in the deed. However, water rights are very confusing. And a neighbor purchased another portion of this property and they have maintained that they have the ability to use the water. We still have not resolved this, frankly. It's a difficult thing to do.
Which neighbor and where in this picture?
So the neighbor is to the southeast. They're not, you can't really see the outline on this property. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so if you see that arm that points off to the east there of our property, the next one over, that 40 acres, was also part of the Tomas estate. And so that was being irrigated prior to our purchase, and neighbor to the south of there purchased that property and has continued to irrigate. Really, at some point, we're going to have to deal with a water right question. You know, it will be contentious. We've had preliminary conversations with attorneys and with that neighbor. We know that they are very going to be fiercely defending that water right, even though we think actually we own it. So that's something that we'll have to resolve.
So goody. So we're gonna wait on that.
We have waited, we're going to continue a little longer.
And I just really wanted to also just bring up was just that in this story, that we only acquired about half of that estate. Right? So in terms of like strategic and responsibility with funds and everything else that we did at that point in time, that there was a very intentional sort of prioritization of what we did and how we did that.
I guess I'll just comment that that's a really good story. And it's important because that particular property purchase has been very contentious, especially with one neighboring party. And because of all of the changes, plans that we went through on account of the various grant requirements, which was difficult for us too. Having said that it's a very good story, I don't know how you tell that story to the public.
Right.
You can do it, I can't.
It's not easy. Yeah, it's just not that straightforward, but I think in the end, the net result is that we, were able to purchase and protect this property, and get a lot of, additional funding in the mix and additional property protected as part of it.
I think what really tells the story is those two slides of what could have been and what is. And so good job, thanks.
Anne Marie has her hand up. Anne Marie has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Anne Marie.
Yeah, I just, showing my ignorance, can you show me on one of the maps where the trail is? That we refer to as the Zeister Lake Trail? Thank you.
You're gonna have to come over and go for a walk.
We don't know.
So,
We don't know anything about it.
Zilstra Lake.
and someone's got control of the cursor.
Yeah,
but, there's
it's
an
kind of
important-
lagging in and out.
There's an important differentiation to make here. We opened this property and there is a trail on the property. We don't think of it as the Zilstra Lake Trail, but it's the trail that goes around the preserve. And it starts in the north there, and winds its way, to the west. I don't know if anyone really wants to try and outline it.
Well, you
But
just say that it
It
encapsulates, circles the main lake, and then there's a spur that goes to kind of overlooking the fields in the southwest quarter.
right, so the Zilstra Lake Trail, or town to Zilstra Lake Trail is completely different than. That's not a project which we were, part of, quite honestly, and it's now been, laid to rest, I think, because it was just far too controversial to take a trail down, San Juan Valley Road. And so that's just, not in play. And
Okay. Tim.
I think it's also important to note on this project that the first acquisition was 9 years ago. So it had started long before that. And I do remember the period of time dealing with the University of Washington as Lincoln, well, Lincoln used to have a lot more hair.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. It was one of the longest negotiations I've ever heard of.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. So are we ready to move on to the outreach and communications report?
We can.
Is Tanya ready?
I just sent something to Anne Marie. So, I mean, two things to bring up. In the materials for the meeting, you have the draft communications plan, and I had highlighted in there an area about, I had on my phone. The pocket sessions, I think that we've referred to, and just really gauging, what you as the commission feel might be an appropriate place to start. Would that be, maybe once quarterly, or maybe you still want to noodle on it a little and you can email me, but other than that, if you had any other comments for the plan, I have to say Erin Andrews was really helpful in getting this together with me. We collaborated on this and she had a lot of great suggestions, so I feel pretty good about it for our first.
Tanya, could you tell us a little bit about where the plan came from? I'm assuming it was you and Erin and our communications committee.
Well, it comes from the strategic plan, so we use that as the base. And then pretty much Erin and I built it and then brought it back to communications committee and then for you all as a commission to look at.
So the committee has reviewed it.
It's been a few months. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk a little bit more about the pocket session. I think it's a great idea. So it's basically just posting like saying, hey, we're here to talk.
More of an informal, actually, it stems from an idea that Doug had, it's a more informal I termed the pocket session idea, but anything from maybe, we've talked about, not a bonfire. Fireside thing. All I had was fire, not lighting anything.
Yeah, tired.
Side chats, but a little more informal, commission meetings are specific and they have topics and it's, the public can have comment, but there isn't a lot of discussion. So maybe an opportunity to have more just an informal discussion, a little bit like a scoping meeting, maybe, when we get together. Yeah, so moving forward, some informal opportunities aside from, county fair or when you have to have an assessment, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And were you thinking about all together or island by island or?
Island by island, mainly I feel each island has a little bit more unique, community, or maybe there's certain topics. Certainly, people can speak to all of them, but, and then we have the county fair where we have the whole county or commissioners can be there as well, but, which is my segue to
Pump
that.
that back. I think it actually came from Maryland.
Did
Uh,
That's still your idea. Good job, Marilyn.
Communication subgroup, there was
Setting
that
up.
discussion of wanting to have more informal opportunities for dialogue with commission and staff, and that was kind of the push. We tried hard to get one, like, in that first quarter of the year, and just, it was too much.
Yeah, it's been a busy year for,
It's a
Yeah.
really busy year. Could we start
Yeah.
next year?
yes, we can start next
I think
year.
that makes good
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah, it needs to be next year.
Yeah. We won't make it this year.
bonfire idea.
Yeah, we'll find an appropriate place for that.
Some beach.
Some beach, now,
Where we don't allow fires.
I know. So that's what that's about. Does that sound maybe one a quarter, just as a goal? I mean, it's part of the plan. It's, or think on it and email me your thoughts.
Seems
I mean,
like
I-
we get more participation spring through fall. than-
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it would probably.
Although
depend
here we
on-
could have a fire.
It would also depend on if there are other scoping meetings or things like that, official meetings
Yeah,
that are happening. So, because I don't think we want to have too many.
yeah.
And I think we need to have cookies or something like that.
Yeah, that can be
That
arranged.
makes
That can be arranged.
I don't think.
Yeah, we talked about like doing something at the Grange here where it was maybe potluckish even, and having, a fire in the fall. And sitting on hay bales out at Silstra, finding a spot for shade, and, just very casual sort of things to, that was kind of the idea.
Mhm. Casual and fun.
That attracts more people. Okay, well, I'll look for that. And then the other,
Before you move on, and I just have one comment about the plan.
oh, sure.
It's really comprehensive. Really a lot of,
Yeah, there's a lot of.
particularly what am I trying to say? Partners, connections, community connections, which I assume is just a sort of a brainstorm list, a wish list of organizations we want to come.
I think we try to be as comprehensive as possible to give a detailed,
Yeah.
explanation of
Which-
where it'll go.
Great.
Yeah.
My one comment is that the plan, all 7 pages of it good. But it's, sort of mind boggling. And my thought was that it really needs some prioritization. What activities we want to do first. And I see you've already been doing a lot of it. A lot of stuff I see has been accomplished, but, I mean, for instance, if we're talking about partnerships or support with various community organizations, which ones are more critical? Because we're not going to hit them all. So some kind of, order of priorities and how we're going to do this.
Well, it stems from it came out of the strategic plan of all the areas to hit, which is why they're all in there. So I thought those were the priorities, and that doesn't come through, I guess, in the plan. Like as far as, education versus other environmental, and including,
Well, I personally thought that the strategic plan was promised way too much in your first year actions. And I was for cutting it down. And again, it's all good stuff, but, we don't want to overpromise and we don't want to overburden ourselves, namely you.
Well, how about,
Part of
I'll add that to
strategic
the
plan
agenda
is to
topic.
Get you some help to do this stuff.
Well, and we do have help. I mean, we've got Margot and the stewards. Everyone really does pitch in quite a bit. But I'll add that as a topic then for the next subcommittee meeting. Prioritization. And leading into that, I'm sorry, was that your comment?
That's it, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Is also the fair, because that's coming up in a month. I'll send out a spreadsheet looking for help for signups for shifts like you all have done before, the county fair. And I'll send that out to our volunteer list too and see what we can get. This year it's different. So it's Thursday through the weekend. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Usually it's Wednesday through Saturday.
So there's a little bit of a challenge, which you're probably aware of. 'Cause
Yeah,
there will be.
That's why I'm gonna get it out a little earlier this year. Yeah.
Tanya, can we just go back to the communication subcommittee? We have 2 members from San Juan, 1 member from Orcas. We don't have a member from Lopez. I wonder if
Where's Lopez?
Where's Lopez? Would that be that would bring us up to 4 commissioners because we have 2 commissioners from San Juan. I'm just wondering if it's something to consider for the future to have someone from Lopez, because it is a different, I mean, these are all different.
Well, we used to have Amanda.
Yeah.
It kind of evened out the issue with the commissioners, too many commissioners. So, I guess that's something to think about.
Well, we can talk
She had
about
to, yeah, drop off.
No, she's there.
No, not here in the
Oh.
subcommittee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would take care of the quorum issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have well, it's just something to consider for the future.
It's a good idea to include Lopez if you can agree not to meet all at once.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the last meeting, everybody missed it, so. And I'm embarrassed about that.
Okay, well, I've got a note on here too, that Lopez are at something to talk about. And then I guess lastly, I'll say our nature prescription walk, that series kicked off yesterday at Zolstra with Dr. Huang. And it was a small group, but it was really great. And he had some good questions about the land bank. And also I think we may have gained another volunteer. After the walk, he has walked just the lollipop loop, the winter loop, but he'd never been on the full loop and pointed out the eagle's nest. And so it was a nice way to start. And the next one actually takes place during the fair on Mount Grant Preserve with Dr. Bula. She's one of the naturopaths in the county. So we'll see what her topic will be. I think it'll be more ethnobot and herbs. We'll see what's out there. And then also today, right now, we've got guided painting on Mount Grant Preserve.
So that's happening right now?
That's happening right now.
Oh, wow.
And then we'll have poetry, I think it's this Sunday. There's a new nonprofit on San Juan Island, which is slowly getting started throughout the county, but they are sort of working in tandem with Alchemy. And so we hope they started some workshops, and I think we'll feature one of their poems at the opening of the Red Tail Trail on August 3rd. Don't forget about that date.
And
Saturday.
we had scheduled a date that we then canceled to be up at the top of Mount Grant, as sort of a little mini open house type thing.
That was a pocket session too. It
didn't
that,
happen.
I think this year it was too much to bite off.
Next year,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
It's birthday.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think one of the most valuable things we offer is the opportunity for people who can't walk to get to the top of Mount Grant on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Yeah, it's quite popular. And the annual report's out. So if you didn't see it walking in, or if you haven't received it in your PO box, but I came into the boxes yesterday. I do have extras at the office if anyone wants it.
I also did an interview with CNL two on
Oh, it's
Tuesday,
live?
which is our budding TV station, the first part of that. They were posting it in 2 parts, maybe the second part should be posted today. Also.
And
has everybody seen CNL too?
no,
Really, really a valuable resource.
So we'll post that on our Facebook page, and I'm not sure where else.
but not on
We
the
can put the
website.
link on the website and so I sent you a link, but they weren't connected yet, whatever was up. So it should be up now.
Peggy,
So I'll resend that
it's
to you.
CNL2.com.
Okay.
And they now have interviews with all of the council candidates, multiple interviews.
Oh,
yes, yes.
Yes, yeah, okay.
It's good stuff.
And I'm going to be doing another one, actually, Amanda Lynn, who's the Home Trust, Home Trust Executive Director, is gonna have her own program, so she's gonna have me on, and we'll talk about land bank and social housing.
Good stuff.
Okay, great.
Just going back to your last, point, Tanya, and the idea of representation on the communications committee, I had an afterthought, which is that, I want to say first that I appreciate everything that you've been doing, and it's a lot, that the stuff that you've been putting out, and the activities and reporting on them, all of that is great. I do have the feeling, though, that it's a little bit San Juan centric. And I wonder, speaking of help, if there's, and I know you can't be everywhere at once, especially with the ferries. I wonder if there's a way that you could get help from and for the other islands. I know the stewards contribute a lot to that too, but just a thought to, if it could be evened out a little bit.
It's constantly in the works. I reach out to many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know Amanda has been putting up a booth at the farmer's market. Oh, I don't know how often, but
Every first Saturday of the month.
yeah,
Yeah.
Which she's doing that herself.
yeah, I helped out one day, but she's.
I helped out as well over.
Yeah, we've all shown up for the first Saturday. Yeah, it's been great. Lopez seems to be the only farmers market where we do find year-round residents, or the community comes, it becomes quite visitor centric on San Juan and Orcas, the farmers markets specifically, yeah. But Lopez seems to have the most farmers still.
We didn't have anything else to do.
Well, that's not true.
And also the bakery is there.
And the bakery is there.
Very important.
That's a big draw. I heard they ran out of bread last time.
Actually, when I volunteered to be there, the bakery didn't show up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, they were in Italy.
Tim didn't plan well for that.
Are we doing a San Juan Island market?
We did it in the spring and we'll do it in the fall,
But not.
but not in the summer, no.
Yeah, we all looked at that question too, and I finally had to concede that you're right, it's mostly.
Yeah,
I like to talk to people, from off island who say, what the heck is a land bank anyway? But it doesn't do us a lot of good.
No,
Hopefully it
not for the
spreads-
time.
It spreads the word, but
yeah. I mean, it's precious, all that volunteer time, but.
Tanya, great job on all the press coming out of Orcas. We've really been getting quite a bit. I think we're in almost every week, so thank you.
we are running late for the stewardship report. So who wants to take that?
Well, I'll just jump in on the ag leasing update item. We've worked through both of those leases. I think that the Fraser Homestead lease is basically ready to go. And I would say for the Grange lease of the Roach Harbor Road side of Beaverton Marsh, I think we really worked our way through the thorniest questions, and we're ready to put another draft back to them for them to follow. So I think that's all moving along.
So what's the process for the commission?
So we'll get it back to Grange. Hopefully we'll have something to come back to the commission in August for you to approve, and then we'll take it on to the council, both of them on council.
So we'll get a draft in the meeting materials for the meeting.
That's the hope, yes.
I hope so.
I think some of that was going back to John, right? Wasn't there some change for you to approve? Whatever, well, close that loop later.
Yes, well.
Okay. Lynn Park Trailhead.
Bunny Park Trail opening.
Opening,
Doug.
well, August 3rd.
August 3rd, okay.
Yeah,
First.
well, I'll just take the opportunity to say, you know, we just had a really big push the last 2 weeks. We had, on one day, we had 3 contractors working and, the same day, 9 volunteers showed up. So that was like, but we got that 99.9% done. I think we're pretty much waiting on signs. Everything went really well. And, again, just to highlight the volunteer contributions were phenomenal. A number of people who are working, you know, 8 or 9 hour days with us to get that done. And some of them off the top of my head, Pete Kilpatrick, he finished work on the Brickworks project the day before, so he's like, hey, I got time. Tom Pence, always there, Elliot Birch, Ross Lockwood, Bob Williams, Barrett Kennedy, Spencer's a person who's been at the Right Herbal Labs, I've forgotten his last name. So really tremendous effort, a lot of fun that was had, so really grateful to our volunteer force.
We need to have a volunteer party.
Mhm.
I second that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea.
The pictures in the
Tyler.
stewardship report were great too.
Oh, but
I just want to know what a puncheon is.
puncheon is a low bridge, and how you differentiate a puncheon between a boardwalk is kind of difficult. Unless you work for the National Park Service, where when you say boardwalk or bridge, then that triggers permitting that can take 10 years. But if you say puncheon, you can do it next week. So, yeah.
Good word to know.
If you've got a little bit of time after the meeting, we can show you one.
Okay.
Out there.
Yeah, that one probably is more boardwalky than puncheon.
Okay. Anything else from the stewards?
I think I could just give a quick update. This is in the stewardship report, but just wanted to extend a general invitation if anyone's interested in coming out to North Shore, you know, during the work. It should be starting in early to mid-August and will take hopefully no more than a month. But I believe John Kane, I think you're reviewing the contract now. So that's kind of hopefully our last step. And the contractor is the same contractor that did the work there, but previously demolished the buildings. And so that it'll be cool for folks to get in there for the Preservation Trust event just before that work. And then hopefully a month later, it'll be pretty much transformed and, you know, aiming towards opening it in late September. So just if anybody's interested in coming out, just give me a shout. Be happy to give you a construction tour.
Great. Peter, why don't you put a date out there and see if you get any takers? My suggestion.
Guys, there's a family here that has this all booked at 10:30,
Oh.
and they're here to set up tables for their rehearsal dinner tonight. And I know you're in the middle of a meeting, but
We had booked it, so there might be a I book it it's the 3rd Friday of every month, so
We
we're
are
almost
very
done.
nearly finished.
yeah,
Can you
I'm
give
just,
us
that's
10
why
minutes?
I don't expect you to stand up and run out the door.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know they're here to do
Okay.
stuff. Yeah, I think there was a double booking.
Sounds like it.
Okay,
Thanks,
We're
Deb.
wrapping it up. Thanks.
thank you. I just.
Okay. Eliza, did you have something?
I'll go real quick if there's time.
Sure.
This is actually outreach, and I'll bring this to the next meeting, but I've been working with Tanya and our partners in design on creating a wildflower growing guide for San Juan County.
Great.
Kind of building on everything we've learned through the Sailor Seeds Project, restoration work on preserves, and lots of other information that's out there, and kind of digesting it in a really pretty format for people who live here to do many habitat restorations in their own backyards or on the streets of the hamlet or town that they live in. So I look forward to sharing that with you next month. And quick thing, since we had this lengthy discussion earlier about expenses, stewardship expenses, projects, tracking, reporting, just hearing Doug talk, it just occurred to me for a project like that, where Doug and Shona, or not Shona, who's been a volunteer, Shauna and Jacob have been working at Beaverton every day for weeks. Easy for staff to put in our timesheet, the budget center for Beaverton Marsh Preserve, and get a rough idea of staff input. So I mean, none of us want to commit to tracking our every hour, but if they're important projects, I mean, I track my time for Sailor Seeds project and grants, and it takes a little extra time, but it's just 2 or 3 projects. So if that's important, it's easy enough to do for where we've got a big push. I think, maybe not from your perspective, but we can capture some of that. So I just wanted to convey that we're not lawyers tracking every 15 minutes of our time, but we are capable of
Kind of,
keeping track.
because while I'm there, I'm also
Kind of.
on the phone, I'm doing meetings with other things, you know,
It's
the
rough.
projects, it would
It's rough.
be
Yeah.
coarse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good, thanks, Alexa. Okay,
Amanda's up there.
I'm sorry, who?
Amanda.
Amanda, hi.
Hi, everyone. I was gonna do a quick update from Lopez. We've just been pushing on a lot of the maintenance, like mowing and weeds, and I feel like we've gotten a really good handle on those and are starting to shift to some of our projects. This week we've been doing some infrastructure maintenance at Hummel Lake, like repainting the outhouse, rebuilding some of the benches, and replacing a gate there. And then also preparing to build a puncheon at Lopez Hill in August. And then kind of waiting on some of the Watmow details, but getting prepared to work there when the approvals come in.
Good, thank you, Amanda.
Thanks.
Okay, to wrap it up, let's see, we have 7 or 8 minutes. So, there's a second public comment period. Couple of members of the public here. Any questions, comments?
Nancy Green.
Yes.
Green.
Oh, Nancy. Hello,
Hi,
Nancy.
I just wanted to compliment you and thank you for your hard work on all the financials, both on the part of staff and commission. This is so important, and I am so thankful that you take it as seriously as you do. So much appreciated.
Thank you too, Nancy. Thanks for your support. Nancy is a member of the renewal committee. So, and an ex-commissioner, of course. So if
One other thing, Brian,
Yeah.
I may have totally spaced this, but did you approve the minutes from the last, did that happen?
Yeah,
Yes.
It did happen.
consensus, yes.
Want to make sure.
Okay. If there are no other public comments, commissioners, anything else, and or future agenda items? Thank you.
Well, we have in the interim had some conversations about the salt. And I don't know if we want to kind of quickly go over that now or have that as a future agenda item.
I think we can talk about that in August.
Is that, so that's not a timing issue if we put that on the agenda for,
No, it's fine.
on the next one? Okay, let's do that.
So the salt discussion.
So we have the salt and we have stewardship budget. Anything else?
Notice flowers.
Yeah.
Oh, for us?
The garden comes to us, but they're not wildflowers.
Okay, I'll take them.
If there's nothing else, thank you all, and we will adjourn the meeting early.
Wow.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Need your